Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Wednesday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 6th day of April 2022. I'm David Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, we've got on the hazardous weather graphic, we've got a snow advisory out for the Kobuk Valley and the Ambler area. That's out for tonight until 1 p.m. Thursday afternoon, looking for an additional 4 to 6 inches of snow to fall around that area. And again, that's out until 1 p.m. And then heading down southeast, we've got a high wind warning out this evening until 11 p.m. for the southern panhandle, especially Prince of Wales Island area, Heidelberg, Craig, Flawak, and those areas. Throw Ketchikan, Metlakatla there as well. And that's for winds of 30 to 40 miles an hour, sustained with gusts to 65 miles an hour as a big storm pushes up this evening and then weakens out by midnight, and then the winds will fall below warning levels there. Already Queen Charlotte Island seeing winds anywhere from 50 to 70 miles an hour wind gusts there, and that moving into the Dixon entrance now, and winds up to at least to 40 miles an hour at Ketchikan currently, with rain on the increase and spreading northward. And from there, going to the National Weather Service Alaska Weather Zone changes. Again, transfer of forecast office responsibilities. That took place yesterday. And Anchorage to Fairbanks, the Cantwell Denali area, Hooper Bay, Chivak will be now written by Fairbanks and not Anchorage anymore. And from Fairbanks to Anchorage, Mentasta Lake and Chisana will be written by Anchorage and no longer written by Fairbanks. And then a new marine zone, 201. That'll be picked up by the Fairbanks office. And for more detailed information, you can find that in the news headlines at the top of the National Weather Service Anchorage and Fairbanks web pages. Satellite imagery showing the huge mass of clouds with that big storm moving up west of the Queen Charlotte Islands. And again, the wind and rain on the increase there over the southern panhandle will now be spreading northward this evening quite rapidly. And then we've got a band of moisture there from the Prince William Sound area in the North Gulf Coast. Extends northward there to the Arctic Village area. And that bringing some moisture today, not anything heavy, to the North Gulf Coast areas and over the eastern interior to a lesser extent. And then another band of moisture, kind of broken up moisture there over the west central interior associated with the cold upper level low. And that brought several inches of snow, and that's going to kind of persist there, and especially over Kobuk Valley, and that's what we're expecting, about 4 to 6 inches of snow, additional 4 to 6 inches over the next, over the next 18 hours or so. Otherwise, out in the Bering Sea, just a lot of cold Arctic air locked in place out there. Snowfall levels down to sea level all the way to the Aleutians. A little bit milder air showing up now over the western Aleutian areas, but storminess, not any storminess out there. You can just see the mid and high level clouds with the system there in the lower left of the picture, and then also crossing the Kamchatka Peninsula area. And that'll just be some moisture that'll move into the Bering Sea as the high pressure area kind of flattens out and shifts southward, but will dominate the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians for the next several days. And putting that in motion once again, you can see areas over the central part of the state eastward into the panhandle, flow generally moving from south to north, and out to the west, flow from north to south, but slowly beginning to weaken. Wind's much lighter now for the Pribilofs. Still carrying some snow today around St. Paul with that moisture, or the cold air coming out near the ice edge there. Alaska Peninsula, some snow showers as well. And areas of snow anywhere from 1 to 2 inches falling at Sparavon over the western interior there, on up to about Galena. Huslia had 1 to 2 inches of snow, and Ambler as well. Some snow showers all the way up to the western Arctic coast. And then the rain and snow brought about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation to Yakutat before it ended earlier this morning as well as in the last 12 hours, Yakutat, Cordova, and Seward all picked up 0.3 of an inch of rainfall, with a couple inches of snow falling in the Valdez area, and also Barravon, Western Alaska Range there, had a couple inches as well, snow showers down to the Bristol Bay area. And then that big storm now rolling up onto the southeast coast, increasing the wind and rain tonight. Again this evening, high wind warning, southern panhandle, winds gusting 65 miles an hour, with rain heavy at times as that front kind of hugs right up along the coastline there. So winds will increase on the north coast later tonight, and the rain will spread up to Yakutat and then cut off right around Cape St. Elias there. It'll be dry over the Copper River Basin, Prince William Sound. Those showers will end, and it'll be dry with some clearing all the way up to the eastern Arctic coast. And then that trough over the west central interior will keep areas of snow and snow showers going, actually into Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, but more so over the Kuskokwim Valley and especially over the Kobuk Valley, with some light snow extending all the way up to the western Arctic coast. And it dries out again, Seward Peninsula, Noatak Valley, northwest coast. Few snow showers along the southwest coast there from, say, Cape Romanzoff or Amonic down into Kuskokwim Bay to Cape Newenham. And still kind of looking at some snow shower conditions for the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, but drying out. You can see big area of high pressure out to the west there, keeping the storminess either to the west or to the south. But that begins to push eastward tomorrow and allow a couple of disturbances with some moisture to slide up to the northeast, bring some snow into St. Lawrence Island, and continue the snow and snow showers, light variety snow showers for the Alaska Peninsula and Fox Islands. Otherwise, back into another round of snow chances for south central Alaska and the central interior, right up to the western Arctic coast, rain and snow or rain and snow showers to the North Gulf Coast. A much better day. The storm moves through into British Columbia. One center breaks off, another center weakens south of Yakutat, and winds will be pretty light for the Panhandle tomorrow with just some shower activity around. And taking a look at Friday, high pressure, narrow ridge, that ridge shifts inland. Kind of control stays well entrenched over the southern Bering Sea, keeping the Aleutians mostly clear and dry with light winds into the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. Light winds, even the Pribilofs on the north side there will pick up some clouds. But west-southwest flow on the north side of that high will push moisture westward or eastward across the Bering Sea into the southwest coast, with snow along the coast, snow showers into the lower Kobuk or lower Yukon Valley, with some snow covering the Seward Peninsula up to the northwest coast, and an area of snow now with that low tracking into southern Prince William Sound. Snow showers will be increasing over the Kenai Peninsula, but dry for Kodiak Island. Gusty winds out of the north and northwest along the passes or through the passes of the western Alaska Range. Lows for tonight, below zero Arctic coast to single numbers in the Brooks Range, Janatuvik Pass and Arctic Village. Low staying above zero for a change, but well below zero there for the Seward Peninsula to St. Lawrence Island. Looking for a low of about 5 for the Pribilofs, depending on the cloud cover and wind. Upper 20s for the Aleutians. Near 30 Kodiak Island, in the 20s south central Alaska, and 30s to near 40 for the Panhandle. Highs tomorrow, 45 to 50 for the southeast coast. Upper 30s Kodiak Island, 38 to 44 south central Alaska, near 40 in the Copper River Basin. And up in the interior there, Fairbanks could push 43 degrees, but Barter Island about 13, 0 at Point Hope, and single numbers to lower to mid-teens over the southwest interior, mid-20s for Bristol Bay, 16 for the Pribilofs, and 30 to 35 out over the Aleutians. And lows for Friday morning, 0 to 15 below for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Coldest temperatures now in the western part of the state. As you can see, the 0 degree isotherm now down into northern Bristol Bay, with cold air coming up to the western Alaska Range there, looking at a low of 5 below McGrath and Nikolai, 1 above for St. Lawrence Island, low of about 10 for the Pribilofs. And from there, high temperatures staying under 20 west of the Alaska Range there, except mid-20s for Bristol Bay, and then warming up out along the coast with increasing southwest wind flow. Single numbers along the Arctic coast, but in the 30s south central Alaska, so a little cooler, and still in the 40s mid to upper for the Panhandle areas, and back down into the mid-20s for the highs for the greater Fairbanks zone, but Eagle still up to about 36. And near freezing there in the Yukon Flats. Kodiak Island should push up a shade above freezing. Upper 20s for the Alaska Peninsula. The coast with increasing southwest winds.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather, a zone of marginal VFR from the Arctic coast through the west central interior down to Bristol Bay, Aleutian Range, Alaska Peninsula, Unalaska Island, as well as St. Paul and St. George, Kodiak Island, the Kenai Peninsula, most of Cook Inlet, into southwest Prince William Sound, IFR from Yakutat in across the northern panhandle and then on down toward Misty Fjords with marginal VFR from around Mount Edgecombe or Sitka southward to Dixon Entrance. And for Thursday afternoon, marginal VFR now from the western central Arctic coast, extending southeastward to south central Alaska, Kodiak Island, Prince William Sound, IFR for the eastern North Gulf Coast, especially Yakutat, possibly into Elfin Cove. But the remainder of the panhandle, marginal VFR, Kodiak Island, marginal VFR, but Sitkinak, VFR. Zone of VFR over the western interior to the northwest coast, and then marginal VFR, St. Lawrence Island, down along the southwest coast to the Alaska Peninsula. But really good out over the Bering Sea tomorrow afternoon. Pribilofs, all the Aleutians, VFR. That holds through Friday morning for the southern Bering Sea. Pribilofs, all the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, into Kodiak now, and VFR to Cook Inlet. Much of the central and southwest interior to Bristol Bay VFR. That marginal VFR zone shifts eastward into the Susitna Valley, Madanuska Valley, Turnagain Arm, Kinnick Arm, Kenai Peninsula with some IFR from Cape St. Elias to Yakutat in across Glacier Bay and northern Lynn Canal. VFR, Upper Yukon Valley, eastern Arctic coast. And for the Friday afternoon time frame, looking at VFR for the central and eastern Arctic coast, the North Slope, eastern Brooks Range, and marginal VFR covering a big chunk of the interior, especially the western interior, all the way from the western Arctic coast there, Wainwright, all the way down to Dillingham, westward to the Pribilofs and St. Lawrence Island, but the southern Bering Sea and Aleutians, VFR once again into the Alaska Peninsula and the King Salmon area, then right up along the western Alaska Range, VFR Kodiak Island. IFR now for the Susitna Valley, Talkeetnas, and the Madanuska Valley especially, connect Turnagain Arms down into the central Kenai Peninsula, maybe as far south as Moose Pass, and also up there around Chena Ridge and those areas north and northeast of Fairbanks, although some of that could get down to Delta Junction, the IFR that is, and VFR for the southern quarter of the Panhandle. And for passes, Anatuvik, marginal VFR for tomorrow. Adigan, optimistically VFR flying weather, and Lake Clark and Merrill both marginal at times, rainy occasionally, marginal, windy looking VFR. Isabel, VFR. Mentasta, VFR forecast. Tanita, same thing, VFR. Portage, though, occasionally marginal. Chilcoot and White improving from IFR to marginal VFR. And freezing levels 2,000 feet in across Prince of Wales Island. Otherwise, at the surface into southern Alaska, but south of the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, with 2,000 feet just south of the western Aleutians. And icing, got some mixed icing, just an elevated threat there over the west central interior from Iliamna Lake, Kamishak Bay, northward across the mid-Yukon River Valley area to the southern slopes of the western Brooks Range, Kobuk, Koyukuk Valleys. Mixed maybe between 2,000 to 7,000 feet. Otherwise, the moderate icing moving into British Columbia, leaving lighter, isolated moderate icing over the Panhandle. And they can look at the jet stream, cold upper level trough there from the Chuck CC into Bristol Bay with another weak center kind of wrapping back to the west-northwest to the eastern North Gulf Coast. That bringing the jet stream northward into the southern Panhandle, about 125 knots from the south-southwest. Otherwise, you're looking at northwest turning northerlies, 65 to 80 knots there across the central Bering Sea to Adak and Atka. Another branch at about 70 knots sweeping across Unalaska Island through False Pass. And at 9,000 feet, southerlies 55 knots there, lower Yukon River Valley and the Nulato Hills up to the western Arctic coast, and 35 to 40 knot winds there with that low that's kind of backing to the west-northwest there into the Gulf of Alaska. And for 3,000 feet, 40 to 50 knot winds, 50 knots up along the eastern North Gulf Coast, just a narrow band of the northwesterlies, 30 knots across the Aleutian Range, Sitkinak area, and pretty light winds elsewhere around the state tomorrow. Turbulence, light to isolated moderate chop there for the northern Panhandle and along the lee side of the Aleutian Range.
On March 11, 2011, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake off the Pacific coast of Japan generated a tsunami. This series of ocean waves sped towards the island nation, with waves reaching 24 feet high. The result was devastation and utter destruction. Towns were engulfed by water and swept away. Farmland was flooded. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. The National Police Agency reported damages to hundreds of roads, bridges, and more than 100,000 buildings. The surging water flooded rivers and destroyed harbors. In some areas along the coast, tsunami waves reached 6 miles inland. Tsunamis not only cause severe damage when they first strike land, but also as the water recedes back to sea. Tsunamis can inflict this type of damage because of some unique features. As tsunami waves travel across ocean basins, they may be as little as a few centimeters high, but they extend down to the ocean floor. This is different than traditional waves, which are only surface features. Tsunamis can also travel hundreds of miles per hour in the open ocean. As these waves approach a coast, the shallowing ocean floor slows the waves down and pushes the water mass upwards. The quicker the ocean floor transitions from deep to shallow, the greater potential for a higher wave height. So, tsunamis that experience this sudden shift into shallow water can have the height and momentum to pack a serious punch. Unfortunately, Japan found itself in this scenario. This image shows how abruptly the Japanese islands rise out of the ocean. Other coastal areas in the region have much more gradual slopes. The earthquake on March 11th was the most powerful known to hit Japan, and the tsunami it created had the necessary ingredients to make it such a deadly and destructive force. "80 miles east of Japan, a 9.0 magnitude earthquake rocks the ocean floor. This disturbance causes a transfer of energy from the seafloor to the ocean, generating a series of ocean waves, known as a tsunami. In about 20 minutes, waves strike the Japanese coastline. Other nations go on high alert because the tsunami will propagate or spread throughout the Pacific Ocean. As the tsunami radiates outward from Japan, it encounters a variety of ocean features, such as ridges and underwater volcanoes, which guide the tsunami and create a complex pattern of scattering and reflective waves. In 8 hours, the waves reach the Hawaiian Islands, and in 9.5 hours, they hit the west coast of the United States. In 16 hours, the tsunami reaches the Indian Ocean and New Zealand, and by 22 hours, the entire Pacific Ocean had been affected. The impact of a tsunami can be highly variable because of the complicated interactions with ocean features and coastline elements. Wave height and speed will differ from place to place. Since tsunamis can be hundreds of miles long and travel thousands of miles away from where they originated, they are considered a worldwide threat when they form. These are the sounds of a tsunami warning. They alert residents that a killer wave is about to strike. These sirens, however, are just a small part of the sophisticated warning systems that played a role in Japan and in the US during the Pacific Ocean tsunami in March 2011. Most tsunamis are generated by an undersea earthquake. Fortunately, Japan has one of the most advanced earthquake early warning systems in the world. It detects tremors, calculates the epicenter, and sends out warnings from over 1,000 seismographs scattered throughout the country. The Japan Meteorological Agency issues the warnings and sends alerts to television and radio channels, the internet, and mobile phone networks. When the earthquake struck 80 miles offshore, warnings were generated in about 3 seconds. The tsunami warnings came 3 minutes later. These take longer because more complex calculations are involved and must factor in ocean data. Since the first tsunami wave struck the coastline within 20 minutes, the advanced warning provided some residents with crucial minutes to reach a safe area. While the earthquake sent powerful tsunami waves westward toward Japan, the tsunami also propagated east into the Pacific Ocean. Here, warnings are issued by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, operated by NOAA in Hawaii. NOAA maintains a large network of buoys with ocean floor sensors that are strategically positioned in the earthquake-prone zones of the Pacific. This system collects vital ocean data for tsunami forecasting. On March 11th, only 25 minutes after the earthquake struck, the first buoy station measured the tsunami and relayed information to Hawaii. Scientists use this data to run models and issue forecasts and warnings to nations throughout the Pacific. From there, local emergency managers decided what actions were appropriate to take for public safety. The earthquake and resulting tsunami devastated the Japanese coastline, causing damage that will take years to repair. While we can't prevent these forces of nature from happening, our early warning systems can help us prepare for the dangers headed our way.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the sea ice analysis. Heavier pack ice down around St. George Island and surrounding St. Paul Island. Expect to stay that way for a few more days, and then again, probably by the weekend, winds will become southerly out there and begin to push it back to the north and northeast. Coastal water forecasts. Gale warnings on the south coast, southerlies 30 to 35 knots tomorrow. Gale warnings on the north coast, east to south winds 40 knots, seas up to 20 feet. And Lincoln Glacier Bay, northern inside waters, south winds 30 knots with higher gusts. Stevens Passage, southeast winds 30 knots with higher gusts. And Clarence Strait, south winds 25 knots, seas 6 feet. Much lighter winds in store for the inner channel areas on Friday. For Clarence Strait, southeast breeze of 15 knots, otherwise central and northern inside waters, looking at variable winds at 10 knots with pretty slight seas. On the south coast, winds will be west 15 to 20 knots, and on the north coast, west winds 15 knots, seas running 7 to 6 feet. Prince William Sound, southwest winds 15 knots, seas 2 feet. North Gulf Coast, west-southwest winds 15 knots, and the Barren Islands, light southwest breeze at 15 knots. Kamishak Bay west at 20, Southern Cook Inlet southwest at 20, north of the Foreland Zone south at 15. Those will swing around to northerly, but only 10 knots for Northern Cook Inlet on Friday. Northwest winds 20 knots south of the Forelands. And Kamishak Bay, Barren Islands, gale warnings, west and northwest winds 35 knots. Prince William Sound, northwest winds 20 knots with 4-foot seas for Friday. West winds 20 knots around Middleton Island. And for Kodiak Island, west winds 20 to 25 knots. Bristol Bay, small craft advisories, northwest winds 30 knots. The Alaska Peninsula, northwest winds 20 knots, seas 5 feet. And for Friday, Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, west-northwest winds 25 to 30 knots, and north to northeast winds 20 to 25 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. In Bristol Bay, northwest winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. Fox Islands, variable to northwest winds 10 to 15 knots, and variable to northeast winds 10 to 15 knots for Adak and Atka. Otherwise, light winds actually along the entire Aleutian chain, with Amchitka looking at northeast 15, becoming east of 15 towards Shemya. Small craft advisories from Shemya to Kiska on Friday as south winds increase to 25 knots. Small crafts also back in the forecast for Adak and Atka. For east winds 25 to 30 knots. And 25 to 35 knot east-northeast winds for the Fox Islands. Southwest coast for Thursday, Northwesterlies 20 knots, 2 to 4 foot seas. Light northerlies for the Pribilofs at 15 knots. West 15 for St. Matthew Island and St. Lawrence Island. And for the outlook on Friday, east winds 15 knots for Norton Sound. East winds 20 knots for St. Lawrence Island, but southerly winds now into the Pribilofs. That'll start to push that ice away at about 20 knots. And for the eastern Arctic coast, east winds 10 to 20 knots and east winds 20 knots for the central coast. West side, east at 10 knots. Pretty light winds from Cape Beaufort to Wales, west-northwest, only 5 to 10 knots. And for the day Friday, southwest winds 10 to 15 knots from Wales to Cape Beaufort, and then westerlies at 15 knots, western Arctic coast. Central coast looking at winds due easterly at 20 knots. And the east side, east-northeast winds 15 to 20 knots. And again, there's a high wind warning out for the southern panhandle tonight as that front presses into the coast. That's out until 11 p.m. Look for 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts with gusts to 65 miles an hour. Ketchikan, Metlakatla, Heidelberg, Craig, Klawock, in those areas. Rain moderate to heavy at times, spreading up probably all the way up to Yakutat late tonight, but cutting off around Cape St. Elias. Dry Prince William Sound and eastern interior. Light snow with that trough from the low center near Chillicothe Strait all the way up to the western Arctic coast. And for tomorrow, rain and snow showers on the Panhandle, North Gulf Coast, areas of snow in the interior. And then the outlook for Friday looks like low pressure tracking up to Prince William Sound, so that brings a chance of snow back to the Kenai Peninsula with gusty, colder north to northwest winds, especially through the western Alaska Range passes. And then a dry slot there with some sunshine in the Kuskokwim Valley up to Tanana, and then more snow into the western interior. High pressure controls the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutian Chain with some light snow in the Arctic.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.